My name is Jordan Harris. I'm here with Fellowship of Midgard, the Heathen Reconstructionist organization, here with my friend Kári Pálsson, who is a folklorist and currently getting his master's in, you said Old Norse history, correct?
Old Norse Religion.
Old Norse religion, I'm sorry, in the University of Iceland. Kári, would you like to tell us about yourself, just a tiny bit?
Yeah, I am Icelander who is have a degree in Icelandic folklore, and I'm in my 30s, and I'm currently finishing my MA thesis in Old Norse religion, writing about Old Norse religion aspects we can find in one of the Icelandic family sagas, Sagas Hússonar, and I'm studying various case studies from that saga, like funeral rituals and so on. But in my previous program, I was especially focusing on Blót and such rituals, both from archaeological point of view and literal point of view. So these are two maybe a little bit different sources that have both pros and cons. Each one has its pros and cons, of course. But if you combine them together, you can get a very interesting outcome, definitely.
So you're taking the approach of using, I would assume, like language studies with archaeology, and the saga material themselves to kind of understand how things were done to the best that we can.
Yeah, pretty much. And sometimes you even have to blend in sometime tiny bit later folklore customs. I mean, neither, most of those textual sources are 13th century Icelandic textual sources, which is of course written 200 to 300 years after the formal acceptance of Christianity. But then again, we have archaeology, and archaeology is, it lacks words, but it has crazy much actions that you can.
Yeah, it lacks a language, but it doesn't really lie either. You just have to figure it out.
Precisely, and it can give you a great context. I mean, my girlfriend, she's an archaeologist, and she told me archaeology. No, what was it again? The context is the god of archaeology, or something like that. And I thought it was a great word.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful.
And yeah.
I've really enjoyed, I think it's Anders Andres' work on cosmology and archaeology. I think I'm butchering his name maybe, but his work is really...
I think I'm not a native like Andres Andrean, but yeah, I think you nailed his pronunciation.
And it's just amazing how much we can learn from like one artifact, like a Bronze Age razor that has significance of like the sun and the moon and how it relates to the underworld through those like folkloric methods and various contexts to get that information. It's mind blowing.
Yep.
So and I really am looking forward to your work whenever you complete your thesis. I would love to see it. What saga did you say you're reading from again?
Saga, the outlaw Gísli outlaw. Yeah, it's a story, a saga that takes place in the West Fjords of Iceland.
There's a
10th century.
Yeah, he like almost made it through being an outlaw, right? Like he was just shy of doing his time being hunted.
Yeah, I mean, I think the people of the TV episode Survivor, they would be like nothing compared to him.
Yeah, I know it's like off tangent, but I love that he brought his sheep in to stay warm and stuff. I forget which group made a reconstruction of his turf house too.
Hurstrikt, possibly, but no, that was Grettir's art.
Okay, then that's my bad.
But Grettir, he was, according to the saga literature, he was the outlaw who was the for the longest time an outlaw in Iceland. I think 13 years.
Yeah,
if I
something
remember correctly.
insane. So I probably got
Something like that.
my sagas mixed up. That's my bad. That's why I
Yeah,
love talking to
we
you.
we all do. I do too all the time. Don't you worry.
So, um, so on bloat, could you, which is kind of like the focus, and I appreciate you bringing it up. Um, what is a bloat? Like the context of it. What makes something a bloat?
Well, from looking only at the word itself, bloat is related to the word blot, blóð, and a blata, to wet something. So, so that tells you maybe a little bit of what might be involved in ritual. But the word blót itself has greater, much wider and more significant meaning. It also involves all the artifacts that might be around, or all the people gathering around, or possibly some idols, and then the timing as well. I mean, the timing of bloat was very important. What date you picked to do a bloat, and so when a bloat takes place, it's obviously a very liminal time, an important time for the people or the person who participates in bloat. And but a bloat is we pretty much, and as I argue in my thesis, is that bloat is not a one single event. It can be, it varies, have a great variety between if there are many people around or if it's a personal bloat. Oftentimes when there's people around, it often has to do with something regarding laws, or like when people want to make an oath and they do some kind of bloat in order to not only to it's basically to underline the importance of the oath taking. You know, this is a time before written contracts were made. So people are doing bloat and naming gods as witnesses. So you're not only doing a physical agreement, but you're also making a godly agreement. So the gods are witnesses too. But then again, we have some accounts, especially from London, the Book of Settlers, Book of Settlement in Iceland. Then we find mostly bloat accounts which are personal bloat, when people are doing sacrifice, oftentimes to waterfalls or stones or hills even. So it seems to be more personal. And oftentimes those accounts are for people to receive some news, like Ingolf Arnarsson, a settler from Norway. He made a bloat in the middle of winter. He was deciding should I leave Iceland or should I stay in Norway, and he did a bloat, and he got the news from the bloat that he should leave Norway and go to Iceland. And oftentimes during this bloat, he not only seems to, do some ritual sacrifice or ritual in some way, but he also, as the accounts say, hann gekk til fréttar, and he walked away from home to gather news. So it seems like the ritual itself involves with some kind of activity at the ritual place, but also leaving the ritual place, possibly going into the wilderness or to some important place where the person receives some kind of prophecy through what it can be, it's spiritual experience or spiritual or godly significance, whatever it is, what if he reads it from the sky, what if he reads it from feeling, we don't really know. There are a lot of things involved in bloat that we just simply don't know.
So would you just assume it's just like any strong personal identifier in the form of like a divination? So if assume it like that's pretty broad. It's like if I'm looking for a sign, what would it be? And we're not sure if this was a sign that the whole community would kind of understand, or just a personal sort of sign.
Yeah, and that's basically the nature of folklore. Like in Old Norse, there was never really an organized or unified Old Norse religion. That's why scholars talk about Old Norse religions. There were many. They varied by valleys, by time, by place, and they varied by social statuses. If you're a woman, if you're a chieftain, if you're a peasant, it was very, very different, and each person's worldview was a little bit different. But of course, they maybe had common ground, common oral and community understanding of how many parts of the world worked. But
Yeah.
But it was very, very personal, of course, and very, very diverse.
No, it's wild how different these cultures can be, even though they're neighbors. I wish we had, I wish we had like the god poles still from all these settlements. Just to see the hierarchy of deity. But we have to deal with having, like Ibn Fadlan's interaction with Rus Vikings and comparing those to the Byzantine, like Vikingard and so on attitudes. And so I'm seeing this from a more contemporary standpoint. I'm obviously not a scholar. I would love to be. I'm working on it, but I appreciate your expertise. So
you have great knowledge too. I must admit, you know the material here.
So
it is a big plus for me. Also just so when I mention something to you, you're like, I know that.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. I'm trying not to say so and so I apologize for that too. So can Blót be done? Because I'm viewing this from the contemporary way that most, I'm just going to say American heathens have reconstructed from the material we have. Because we're far away from the originating cultures, and through new religious movements, we have created like new traditions. We're still figuring stuff out in a reconstructionist sense, and it's very difficult. So from most people's point of view, Blót is held on specific holy days for specific reasons during specific times. So like I'm probably going to butcher it. Like Blót would be like victory Blót of the Teutonic tribes, which borderlines like Old Norse, but yeah, I believe it's identified a little differently. It's for victory. You would do a sacrifice during the summer months for victory, for this reason, as a community event, where you do have those aspects of law, of oaths, of inviting the gods kind of in to oversee things and to take these sacrifices in order to get a boon or an edge out of it, or to have a relationship with that deity. Most people would consider Blót a communal event rather than a singular event. And we often label these singular events, like if I lit some incense and offered mead to Odin for something personal, that's considered more like an offering, not a Blót. If that makes sense. Could you unpack that for me, and where that could be mistaken, wrong, or otherwise?
Well, I personally, if people do some kind of Blót in their own way, who am I to say that they're doing it wrong? Each and everyone do what they want to. But if we want to look at it from academic and historical point of view, it's hard to say, to be honest. But those personal Blót, they were also done. I think they were also very, very diverse. But we find a little bit of in the beginning of winter, which is at Veturnáttablót, which is usually done around October, usually around the time of Halloween. Then there were often a personal family Blóts, and people were doing sacrifices to these riding female deities called Dísir. And those Dísir were oftentimes a bit of a spiritual guardians of people's fate, or something like that.
Yeah, another
You can say so.
aspect of personal luck, right? A familial
Yeah, but
personal
it
luck.
was both communal and personal. I think it was a little bit of family bloats. Each family did this bloat. And we also have one account, Österfaravísir, by Sighvatur Þórðarson, if I remember his name correctly, when he went to Sweden and he wanted to he witnessed it locked mart of bloat called Almablót, sacrifice or bloat to the elves.
Yeah.
And that was something that seemingly very, very personal. It was not open for everybody. But so I think in a sense that a personal bloat, it has many varieties and many meanings. But I think that those big events, especially at Uppsala or something, that was very, very political also, and it involved a lot of business and politics and powers, and it was around something that the chieftains and the people in power loved, especially.
Yeah,
I think that's on the other end of what bloat can be.
Yeah, no, it's that big reason to bring like the I'm just gonna say like world powers kind of like together in one place. You have the mixing of the whole culture there for these, whether it's a thing or whether it's a part of bloat, and then goes into the symbol. Njál Saga, I feel like encapsulates that pretty well because it keeps taking these breaks to focus on like the thing, right? To focus on these big social meetings where these characters interact through the marriage drama, right? And so it ties together. And if I'm misspeaking that, please let me know. So it's this big social center point, and if you have that religious aspect that's a part of culture, because I think it's difficult for. I'm just going to say us or people that are practicing or studying, because we tend to separate, like politics and religion, or power and religion, or science and religion, whenever this was probably one and the same all around. Like these were forces of nature that you were dealing with. Would that be fair to say? Like through.
I think so. In many cases, yes. I mean, as my friend Joseph Root, he wrote his thesis in Old Norse Religion about Odin, and his basic conclusion was that Odin is a concept. It's not a sky figure a deity figure in the sky or something, but it's a concept that a powerful chieftain, if he puts on the right clothes and the right mask, he can, in a sense, become Odin. Like the priest puts on his collar and gives bread, he's delivering and giving bread and blood of Jesus. He becomes a Jesus in a sense. So a little bit extreme example, but do you remember the helmet Sutton Hoo?
Yeah, yes. I know that's argued a lot, but please break it down.
Yeah, that helmet is a great favor of mine. If I remember the story correctly, they were making some TV remake or TV show about Sutton Hoo, and when they put the helmet on and went into a longhouse with a fire in the middle, they saw that the one eye was glowing, and his voice will change a little bit like this. That person who puts the helmet on, he becomes something else. He's not himself, but he becomes a little bit like Odin. So,
so would this be like similar to like just like the changing of shapes and forms through like berserkers or
in a sense, there is a lot of shape shifting, and so in a sense, I mean, Nordic people in in Viking Age, they relied heavily on masks and rituals, and they become something else. Masks and even ritual theoretical plays played a huge role back in the day. And I think sometime in modern days we might a little bit misunderstand or miss what the importance and the significance in putting some costume on or some additional equipment on, and he becomes something else. This was a great deal to the people back then.
See, like that's something I personally struggled with, is if we hold a blót or a communal offering or something, it's genuine as it is. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to be dressed without feeling like I'm role playing or I'm misrepresenting like cultural aspects of something. So if I dress up like like even a historical person from like Scandinavia or the Norse people in what they would have worn, that's kind of like role playing a bit, even though it's more traditional. And if you were to treat it like a living faith, what would they be wearing now? Type of situation.
Yeah.
And so it's difficult.
I get what you mean. I mean, it's a little bit also how we perceive things in the modern day. I mean, I know that if you grow a lot of beard and put a hat on and a cloak, you might feel like you're a Gandalf instead of Odin. I don't know.
That's what it spoils the experience of trying to connect spiritually to something.
And I totally get that.
Let alone understand it from like an academic perspective as well. Of like, why am I doing this? Why would this be natural? Yeah.
But I mean, if it feels right to people and if it makes sense to people, then I think it's of course, why not doing it? I mean, oftentimes also traditions are created. It's not something that is static. Things adapt and change, and you can also create things out of old. Why not? I mean, like Vardurna is doing. All the old songs are lost, so why not create the new ones? Like Einar Selvik himself said, and it works. It inspires people and is very emotional and moving for them.
No, I agree, and we're seeing parts of that happen now of people at least like writing poetry and trying to write kinnings for deity and writing some stories, but it just hasn't had enough going for it to, I think, be taken seriously by the community itself. Other than that's neat, that's your personal little thing. It might not matter till 100 years from now, and then people are digging up that and going, look at this old find. I don't know. It's weird, and that's the space I kind of live in, and that's why I like talking to you. Yeah. I'll bring you this.
Yeah. I mean, all these things are a little bit complicated too. I of course don't know really much about American politics or American cultures in a sense. I mean, I know something from seeing from TV or movies, but I mean, even myself, even if I'm Icelandic and even if I grew up reading the sagas, I know that looking back when I started to study folklore and Old Norse religion, I had slightly different idea what it might have been from what it actually was. The idea I had back then was I thought it was more literature than, if it makes sense to you, Icelanders, they read a lot of literature, and in order to understand the literature, you have to understand the background of the literature. Where does the sources come from, and why are they there, and what were they written for, and so on. So, for example, most Icelanders today, if they have to guess who was the biggest god in Iceland in Viking Age, most of them might think it was Odin. Well, in fact, it was Thor. Thor was the biggest god in Iceland. And so, even if you're born and raised Icelanders, you don't have the knowledge about Old Norse religion as many people might think. There's still a lot of modern day cultural aspects that you might miss, like why do people think that Odin was the biggest? It's because we draw that conclusion from written sources, which were very political at the time. And so, yeah, I mean, even modern day Icelanders, they might have totally different ideas of what the Old Norse religions in Iceland were back in the days from what they believe it was. Just because you're an Icelander, you're not expert. You're not at all. I mean, yeah. I have studied this now for many years, and I feel like I know nothing. The more I study, the less I think I know. Honestly, that's how it works.
That dashes my confidence every time you say that. That's like, but I've read the Havamal 37 times. When do I know more? Help, or
Yeah, I mean, I feel often very when I'm writing my papers and I want to get in bottom or something, I get often very frustrated because I want to know more, and sometimes you lack sources to know more. And you just end up stating, I don't know.
That would be my thesis. Is I don't know. Here's like a skeleton with a spear. So on the that's really good. Thank you. I'm trying to find the right words now. Is there anything that would make something not a bloat, historically or academically? Like, how do you codify? How do you categorize? This would be a bloat, because it sounds like, again, that any sort of sacrifice of personal significance to the gods is considered like a bloat. So is the context there like animal sacrifice, or is there different categories for different types of sacrifices?
I think that looking at archaeological context, we see that around or before the 5th or 6th century, people were doing a lot of bog sacrifices, and they were sacrificing artifacts. They were sacrificing even wagons or swords or clay and pottery and whatever.
Just throwing them in the bog?
Yeah, and I think in a sense that it's still a sacrifice. It just does not involve blood from an animal. So it's, I think it's really, really hard to say that is something not a bloat. I think bloat in 9th century Norway was totally different from bloat in 5th century Denmark, and is who is right and who is wrong. I mean,
that's why I'm asking you.
Yeah. I don't think that it really worked that way, So in a sense that, I mean, I don't know exactly what your community does or does not, but
it's really just a point of. Sorry,
it's a blow. If it is a blow to you, then it is a blow to you. And
I'll take it.
If it's important to you, it's who am I to judge?
It's just a point of contention between groups and people who really claim they're scholars, but that lack the ability or that lack the background more so. Like it'd be like if I said I was a scholar, right? I've read a few sagas, I've seen some archaeology, that makes me a scholar, right? That's not how that kind of works. My perspective on these things would not be as good as someone that's gone through like the University of Iceland or Denmark, or really any medieval studies course would be better, right? You have this.
Well, independent readers, they can be bloody clever too,
I agree.
I mean, you can find scholars that are, one thing about, being a scholar is that I disagree with so many of them. And that's what being a scholar is about. If you post a paper that is very, very revolutionary, you'll find at least 10 other scholars trying to figure out why your conclusions are wrong. You get what I mean.
No.
Scholars hate each other.
Well,
and that's just how it is, And I like it because, it's competitive. You want to be competitive and being very, what's the English word? Not loyal, but
you want to put like your best stuff forward, right? Like you want to. Is that what you're getting at?
I'm lacking the English word sannspár in Icelandic. Convincing.
Okay. Yeah. So you want to present the most evidence possible with the most context possible for the conclusion that the evidence shows of why you're saying that.
More or less.
No, that's awesome. So, I don't want to like run around in circles. So just to bring everything kind of together. So Blót was a historically very different across many cultures. The word is used for many different types of sacrifices, whether they be personal objects, alone, with a community, animal sacrifices, whatever.
And I mean, there are many accounts in the Icelandic sagas, which might give us of course we had to be careful about what to trust and what not to trust, but there has been many studies on that, and that's one of the things I was looking around a lot, and but the basic conclusion is that we have Blót accounts in Úlfljótslög, which is the law of Úlfljótur. I can send you that if you want to.
Yes,
sometime.
Please.
Then he's basically a goði, a very badly translated pagan priest. He takes an armoring and he rettens in a bull's blood, and when he needed to settle some law or some oath, he said that I name it in whites, that I make an oath to this armoring, and help me some Freyr, Njörður, and the Almighty Ás, whoever that might be. I think it's Thor. But he's making an oath on an armoring and rettens in the blood, and he's being very loyal, and I think that can be related even to, when a pagan priest put a bloody ring on his arm, he's I think he's also representing a little bit Tyr, who was also very loyal. So if you see what I mean, he put his arm.
So could that also be because, like, to me, from what I understand, the Gothi or however we like, whatever the best pronunciation is more so the representative. They were law speakers. They were like. I'm just gonna say, like, the representative of like a community that had community trust between them and the gods and them and their laws, right? You would have to trust this person when you had a dispute, because there's really nothing stopping two families from killing each other. Like
and those guys, they had great political power. So the guys that those those pagan priests who do these things, they're obviously doing Blót around people. There are people being named as witnesses. So this is kind of a Blót that is involving people. We have. These Blóts were made to keep law and order and swear oaths on things and parliaments, and they were also involving feasts, like we find in Hákonar's Saga Góða, one of the Norwegian kingsagas. And then, oftentimes those Blót are associated with temples. But one can wonder what kind of temples are these. There were, scholars are debating a lot about, because around place names, we have a lot of Hof place names in Iceland and in Scandinavia. There are a lot of them, Hof place names. And archaeologists in the late 19th century and in the early 20th century were constantly trying to find these ritual buildings. And apparently they were not finding one. And so in the 1950s or 60s, this, if I remember correctly, it was Swedish Olaf Olafsson. He concluded that these Hof do not exist. But actually, in later time, we are finding a lot of cult houses, which actually are very, very late Viking Age ritual political power places. But one can wonder, though, if so, why are all these Hof place names around? And it seems that people maybe change their houses to Hof, a ritual place in a sense. Just like you change your house, like you change your house into a Christmas house during Christmas. You're changing the environment, you're changing the states, you're changing the atmosphere. And those place names with Hof, they're oftentimes very central, which can also be a little bit political in a sense. So it's like a community gathering place, which involves both political, business, and religious aspects.
I mean, that would track, at least from my understanding of, like, the reliant on, like, the hospitable nature of something to host, and then on top of the change of perception that we see with other aspects, like the mooning magic, whether it's the shamanistic animal changing, whether it's like just representative objects like the oath ring. Like it's almost like Freudian. Sometimes the chair is a chair, sometimes it's something completely different, it seems. And I mean, regarding those temples, I mean, I think most of the time they were built out of wood, which of course has disappeared since then. I mean, there are a lot of things we simply don't know. Yeah, and what I found interesting was the holy tree sites that are all around Scandinavia, like the holy pillar and tree sites that we have for
Irminsul.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
And I was surprised of how abundant those sites actually are throughout the country. Or the countries.
I mean, I think those poles or pillars, they were something that, people, according to the sagas, Icelandic sagas, they were portable also, and people took them and they were called Andveisulur Hæsid pillars, badly translated. And people carved Thor on them and threw them in the ocean, and where this figure would come to land, then they would, build their settlement or build their farms. In a sense, you can think this as a huge slot casting. It's a huge slot cast. You put everything under. So these pillars were, very religious in a sense too.
So and that's kind of another common theme through like Blót, and then this is waiting on the answer. Like there should be something that kind of knocks back, right? It would be the point, if not just for like a boon. Like if we held Blót, right? What would be our typical expectation afterwards? If you can even assume, what would be a standard expectation for after Blót, just on like a religious level? Sorry, I'm finding my words.
Well, I don't know, honestly. Whatever you might think that matters to you. I mean, for a good luck, I suppose. The people did Blót for prosperity, for fertility, for good luck in the future. You know, it was not only to gather political powers or gather news, but it was also, you know, something people did to have a good luck in the future. One thing I forgot to mention, though, is that oftentimes in the sagas we find a thing called hlautbolli, which is basically a sacrificial bowl or a sacrificial cup. And these are mentioned often. This is, for example, mentioned in Eyrbyggja saga and Hákonar saga góða and Kjalnesinga saga. And oftentimes people would, you know, sprinkle the blood on a wood or on a wall or whatever, and read some prophecy out of that. But of course, we had to be a little bit careful about, especially in Hákonar saga góða, some of it can resemble Christian ideas. Sprinkling holy water or something, but we can definitely see from the Eddic poetry that sprinkling blood and reading prophecy out of that is something that was done in the old times. There is this account about the Cimbri tribe in Denmark that a powerful woman would decapitate prisoners and read prophecy out of their blood as it ran down as they were decapitated. So, you know, reading prophecy out of blood is something that was very, very, seemingly very ancient. And I think it involves good luck also, and yeah, prophecy.
That is really insane. Like, to put it bluntly, like at least the last bit there, that is wild.
I mean, I think it underlines the importance of Blót as a ritual. You put a lot of effort into it.
No, absolutely. On that, I'm trying to... Sorry. I'm being a bad interviewer. I really want... Cool. So, on Blót, on the sprinkling of blood, many people also take that as like a hallowing act or a sanctification of an area. With the using the blood on buildings to sprinkle, to spray from the gothi and the cup of blood, essentially. Is there any concise consensus on that aspect of it being a hallowing or being associated with like Landavitir or spirits or whatever the case may be, an acknowledgement? Is there any consensus on that?
Well, yeah, maybe. I think that, you know, oftentimes when animals were sacrificed and blood was splattered around, you're also luring, people are also cooking a lot. And we find that especially in archaeological excavations that these rituals involved cooking meat. And I think that was, you know, something as a sign of hospitality towards the godly deities. You are luring them to you, inviting them, like as a good host or something. But I think that, you know, but about reading prophecy from Blót, I think that we don't know exactly how it was done. It's something that was very, very folkloristic. These were, you know, accents that were taught from generation to generation, and which of course changes and adapts to each society and whatever.
Yeah, and by generation.
I think that reading prophecy out of Blót is something that, you know, if a person will sprinkle blood over a wood, to me, I would not have an idea what that could mean, but maybe people 1,000 years ago, they would read significant thing out of it. You see similarities often in later Icelandic folklore that in when people were slaughtering animals for the winter, that they would read the intestines of the animal and read, they would see that this part of the animal looks like this. Oh, that means the winter will be harsh. Or if they see the kidney of the animal looks like this, oh, then it means we will have good weather next year or good prophecy next year.
That's really interesting.
And Romans would do this as well.
Yeah, no, it's extensively documented in Roman culture. This is the first time I'm hearing of it being connected to Iceland as well, even though that's not surprising. Relying so heavily on agriculture and harsh winters as well.
Yeah. Even in later folklore, in 19th century Icelandic folklore, when people are reading this out of animals and what is it called? Intestines in the inner body parts. Intestive. What's the word? Like where the food goes through the stomach and so on.
The digestive tract, like the
intestine.
Intestine.
Yeah, something like
sorry.
that.
Yeah.
So, like 19th century Icelanders would understand it in some way, but if I would see the same thing as them, even 100 years ago, I would not know what on earth they were talking about, You see what I mean? So, to 19th century Icelanders, this was something that was important to them, and they knew exactly how to read out of that because that's what they were taught.
Yeah, it meant their possible survival in winter. Like there was a great deal of faith.
This was something that was taught to them when they were kids and so on, but this was not taught to me. Even 100 years ago, these social understanding of certain things changed a lot.
Yeah, and that's part of the issue that you deal with constantly is you're looking at saga and folklore that changed dramatically, and since it's the norm, right? Like my concept of a ghost is very normative for my time and place where I live currently. There's no need to write that down. But the 3 generations will have a completely different idea of what a ghost is. And if they wanted to look back, there's no... I didn't write down what I thought a ghost was. There was no need.
I mean, ghosts in, even in early 20th century Iceland, ghosts or draugar, they were, stinking bodies, like zombies. They were not spiritual. But today they're both stinking bodies and something spiritual. So the concept of draugur or a ghost is something that changes a lot in recent Icelandic society as well.
Yeah, I remember you telling me how to tell the difference between a person and a draugar coming to your door. It's 2 knocks, right?
Yeah. Well, it's a 3 knocks.
Okay, I would have died then.
Yeah, I think you would. No, but if it was 3 knocks, then it was a real person. But if it was a 1 knock or 2 knocks or 4 or 5, then it's a draugar or a ghost. So 3 knocks, then it's a real human person.
And that centers around like a holy number, right? Of 3.
In a sense, yeah.
Yeah, and we see that through Norse, we see that through Christian, so that probably got really cemented in the folklore.
Yeah.
Of like Father, Son, Holy Ghost, and then it being a constant cosmological symbol for Old Norse religion.
Yeah.
So I guess because I know it's getting sort of late there, I guess my last question would be, what if anything makes a Gothi? And what would be the main responsibilities? Like, what would make someone a Gothi historically, and then even as we see revivals, if you have any thoughts on what would make a Gothi now?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, if a Gothi is someone who is generally very well respected by the community, and then he is a godly, I suppose, with great knowledge and so on. But at the same time, I think it's important to adapt it a lot to modern social norms. I don't think that if we try to recreate God 1,000 years ago, I think people would look to try to do everything like God did 1,000 years ago. I think people would maybe look at it with a little bit of weird eye today, some of their actions. But I think it's a little bit to each and everybody's social norm today. So I don't really know. If people want someone to be a god, then go for it, I suppose.
No, I agree. Especially on like the community respect thing, is I personally think that without a community, it's hard to say you're a Gothi. Like without some other people that can respect you as that, since it's more of a title, a community title. I think that's like the big part of it, is like you have to be a priest of something. I would assume.
Yeah, very likely. I think that also a little bit that gets forgotten in this all is that Goði or Goðar, plural, they were very, at least what we find in the Sagas, they're very male dominant. But if we look back to like 7th or 6th century Scandinavia, we see that a lot of women had great power as well, equally to men, even not sometimes more. They had great power regarding prophecy, and so I think sometime I think that Goðar today are a little bit, people tend to focus a little bit too much on to be a Goði, while maybe communities might regard it as some woman of the community as a very important figure regarding prophecy or something like that. So it was less of a central role, but each and everyone had maybe their pros and cons. This person was a good to read prophecy. This was a good smith. This person was a good in making decisions about farming. I don't know. If you get what I mean.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I think that oftentimes, especially in those 13th century literature, we find that there's the power roles are often in hands of men. But I question a lot. Was it like that? I don't think so. At least not according to archaeology. I think that women had way great more power than they're often given as granted or given as.
And on that, I think you're right that on the specifics ability, and we kind of see that in some circles today, in like contemporary practice or New Age religions or whatever the case you may call it, where someone is trusted to be closer to one deity than another, so you could go ask them something. You know what I mean? You're not you're not isolated to just one person for everything, and I think that gets lost too with a Christian mindset, like coming from Christianity.
Yeah. I mean, just by looking at the difference between those big Norwegian ship burials, the Gotstad ship burial and the Oseberg ship burial. The Gotstad ship there's a man in that ship, but we don't really find a lot of spiritual connection around the ship. But with the Oseberg ship, there are 2 females buried there. I think most likely one of them was very powerful. We don't really know which one, but we can see a lot of it has huge spiritual connection, and the women buried there was obviously very respected in a society, and they gave her this funeral out of very big reason we might not know exactly what for, but I think it's safe to say that she was a powerful woman and a spiritual had a spiritual importance to the people.
Yeah,
something that man could not do, I suppose.
And I hope that we find more instances of that going forward in archaeology. I know that contested grave of the female warrior that broke like 3 or 4 years ago, where they ran her chromosomes or genome or DNA or something to confirm that it was a woman wearing armor with man-killing war arrows, and she was dressed for war, which is very unconventional, and people contested the find, even though we have direct proof.
Although if I remember correctly, people are debating if we can actually prove she is a woman or not. I think the archaeological records are not the one in I think it was in Birka, but there are some examples, I'm pretty sure of.
Yeah, no.
This is something I'm not really expert on this thing though.
No, but no, I would agree that that the roles, depending on culture and time period, were vastly different, and so going forward they can continue to be vastly different in a very good way. And if anything was going to be sort of, I'm just going to use the word progressive, you can do worse than Old Norse religion when it comes to religious titles or study or equality, even as far as being tied to religion.
Yeah.
Like, it seems very independent.
Yeah, I suppose.
But I really do appreciate you, Kári. I hope this was a good conversation for you, and I always appreciate you sending me sources and talking with me. And I hope to be as wise as you one day.
Well, I'm not an expert, I think, even though I'm trying to learn more and more. I feel like the more I read about this, the less I know. So
No, I am the same way. Do you have anything that you would like to share? Anything that you would like to mention so that other people can find or look at or donate to, or whatever the case may be?
Well, I think regarding like one of the best books I've read in recent times is Neil Price, The Viking Way. I think that reading Neil Price's work is a great thing to do, and he's studying a lot of. He's blending a lot of archaeological excavations to written sources, and he's in this book Viking Way. He's studying a lot of the Seiður and Galdur, like some kind of prophecy and magic around women. And
there's a lot of interest in both of those. Comparing
that to archaeological excavations and so on. I think, reading Neil Price and Anders Andrian and Terry Gunnell and also Lasse Gardella. He's also.
How would you spell that? Sorry.
Lasse Gardella. I'll send that to you.
Okay, I'll add it.
Yeah.
But thank you. We're always needing good sources to look at. They get lost in the sea of newer work by not so good people. Is all I have to say. By people that haven't done their homework or haven't been peer reviewed or just talk out of their butt in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I really do appreciate you, Kári, and thank you.
Yeah.
And
thank you too, man. It was a great talk.